Good afternoon, y'all, and welcome to another edition of the Carolina Weather Group. I'm Frank Strait, your host for this episode, recording at the Schiele Museum in Gastonia. Sitting next to me is my friend Clay Cheney, who has, this is the second time I've had the opportunity to work with him in my days up in Pennsylvania working for AccuWeather. Clay was my co-worker up there, and now he and I are kind of partners in the weather industry in South Carolina, where I work for the South Carolina State Climate Office in my day job. Clay now works for the National Weather Service at GSP. So we'll talk a little bit about the process of becoming a meteorologist, and in particular, becoming a meteorologist, and in particular, Clay's career path here, getting to work for the National Weather Service. So Clay, we'll start out by asking you first, you're from this area, right?
I am. I'm from Shelby, North Carolina, born and raised. Went and got my meteorology degree at North Carolina State University. And like you said, starting out, I came to AccuWeather. That's where me and you met each other. I was only there for 8 months.
Right, I was there for almost 20 years.
Yeah, so a lot more experience than I had at AccuWeather, but short stint, learned a lot, and then actually led the way for me to get into the National Weather Service.
No, that's right. The AccuWeather is generally well known as a good stepping stone to other paths in the weather industry, so to speak. But yeah, that's Clay's career path. As many of the viewers know, I'm a native of Rock Hill. Grew up there, lived in Asheville. That's where I went to school, is at UNC Asheville, and then up to AccuWeather for 20 years before coming to the South Carolina State Climate Office. So that's basically my career path, and that's kind of the focus of this episode here, is to talk about career paths to becoming a meteorologist. And we'll talk in particular about Clay's, because he goes to work for the works for the National Weather Service, and those who are interested in meteorology, I know a number of people who are interested in becoming a meteorologist will want to work for the National Weather Service. So we'll start out with that, and we'll start out with exactly how Clay came to be a meteorologist, and we'll start out basically at the high school level and talk a little bit about what those who are in high school now and have a strong interest in meteorology and atmospheric science, what that career path is going forward from there. So Clay, when you were in high school, what courses did you take, and what were your counselors in school steering you toward?
Yeah, so of course a lot of math and science, right?
Absolutely, that's the obvious part.
Yeah, yes. So I took AP Calculus while I was in high school, took AP Chemistry, AP Physics. Those are probably the top three, I would say, as far as high school courses you want to take before getting into meteorology. Any kind of communication class too that you could take. I think that's important whenever we're out here trying to, give people details about the weather and how we actually message that to them. We want to make sure that it's clear and concise for them to understand. So any kind of communication course would work as well.
Right. I think that's important too. And that's one of the things that we really picked up, both Clay and I, when we were working at AccuWeather, was the communication aspect of it. And I think that's really important. If you're in high school right now and you're interested in being a meteorologist, the math and science classes are obvious. You want to study hard in that and do as well as you can. But other things are important as well, because the days of going to school and becoming a meteorologist, getting a meteorology degree, and only being able to forecast the weather are gone. That's long gone. You need to be able to bring more to the table, be it be a great communicator, to be able to speak well in public, or become a computer programmer. That's something else you can do, starting at the high school level, and maybe even earlier, is become a good coder. And there are a lot of ways you can take that as well. You can be scientific programming. You can be a web programmer. Those are important as well. But being a good communicator is very important. So not just those math and science classes, but also English classes. If you want to become involved on the debate team, that would be a good way to hone your public speaking skills. And perhaps even if you want to be involved in your drama program, that gets you in front of an audience and helps you to become a better speaker as well. So those are some of the ideas that I have, in addition to what Clay came up with here as well.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's move on to the next level here. You went to NC State, I went to UNC Asheville, both schools in North Carolina.
Yep.
So what are the courses that you took, aside from your core meteorology classes? That's going to be the obvious thing.
Yeah.
But what other classes did you take that were both required and electives for you?
So I also took, of course, we had our meteorology classes, like you said, any kind of the required courses. So we had our, I would say basic understandings of how the earth works. Any kind of course that deals with, trying to think. I did a lot of geology. I actually got a geology minor, so I did a lot of classes with that. I actually took one interesting one. It was about glaciers and how those actually interact and how they can impact the atmosphere. So that was actually a pretty cool class that I took. Other classes, once again, communication classes, I can't say that enough, how important that was for me coming up into through college. One of the things I also wanted to point out was clubs. So we had a broadcasting club, we had a weather balloon launching club, so radio sign club. There was also operational forecasting clubs. There's research opportunities that you have while you're in college. I would say take advantage of those as well. And as far as the National Weather Service, I know there's some programs out there that it's not required to finish the mesoscale course and the remote sensing and radar course to get your degree, but it is required for the National Weather Service. Mm-hmm. So I would always highlight that as far as if you want to get into the Weather Service, that's the courses that you want to make sure that you take.
Absolutely. I'll second the notion from Clay about taking the communications classes and also to be involved in those extracurriculars. Another thing you can do is be involved in the Weather Challenge forecasting competition. Mm-hmm. That's a more national thing, but when I went to school at UNC Asheville, we had a forecasting competition amongst the students there, and it was actually part of your grade in synoptic meteorology.
It was ours too.
That was important as well, because that's how you learn to be a good weather forecaster, is by actually doing it. So that's another thing I would suggest. Now, there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this, but by all means, get some practice with forecasting the weather. If you want to have your own website, if you want to do it on social media, that's great. Just be sure you don't try to portray yourself as being something you're not, as being a meteorologist already, especially if you're still in high school. Mm-hmm. Do put your name on your work, so to speak, and do something that you're going to be pleased with, so people understand where it's coming from, and also point out your level of experience, so people realize that they're getting a forecast from an enthusiast or a meteorology student instead of someone who has the degree already and has been doing it for years and years. Like I say, there's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and some people they come across as being hypesters. Mm-hmm. And social meteorologist, as James Spann in Alabama calls it, and that's not the path you want to take. There's, like I say, the right way and a wrong way to do it. Try to do it the right way.
And you brought up the weather challenge. That actually was kind of getting involved in that, and also doing an internship at WRAL kind of made me steer away from the broadcast industry, because I did pretty well in the weather challenge, and it kind of gave me that niche of like, hey, maybe I could actually do something other than broadcasting. So I actually went into the weather challenge, came out, made the tournament, and actually did pretty well. And so that steered me to operational forecasting. Also, I just wasn't too sure after WRL if that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
That's the good thing about internships too. You figure out exactly what you want to do in your field.
Exactly, and that's important. Being a broadcast meteorologist isn't for everyone. Going to grad school and going to the academia side of it, and that's not for everyone either. Mm-hmm. Working for the National Weather Service isn't for everyone, even though that's considered the rock stars these days, the people who work for the National Weather Service. But the truth is, that's a grueling schedule working there, and it isn't for everyone.
A lot about that.
And a lot of meteorology jobs are like that, that have a grueling schedule. Most meteorology jobs are not 9-to-5 jobs. Mm-hmm. That was definitely true at AccuWeather. You were working overnight most of the time, right?
Yeah,
I was working 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. and sometimes 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. up at State College. So the hours can be all over the place and can vary. And of course, the National Weather Service does rotating shifts. A lot of private sector meteorology or forecasting companies do that too.
Yep.
So you have to realize what you're signing up for when you decide to become a meteorologist.
Definitely do your research upon, signing, or I guess applying for jobs in meteorology, because the schedule, like Frank said, it can be gruesome. For me at the Weather Service, I do a lot of rotating shifts, so each week is different between mornings and evenings and nights, and whether or not I'm off that weekend or I'm on that weekend, that's not factoring in coming in extra for when there is severe weather, right, or whenever there's vacations involved or people need to
Yes.
take off. There's a lot of filling in as well. So the one thing I will say, if you are working night shifts, at least we get compensated for it. We get night
Right.
differential and Sunday differential and stuff. So
Right.
I guess in some cases it works out in our benefit if you're working nights, if you don't mind that kind of schedule. But I know a lot of folks would rather have the banker's hours is what I like to call them.
Yeah, I'm one of the few jobs in meteorology. The one I have at the climate office in Columbia is most of the time I am doing 9 to 5 work. But when something active is happening, like a hurricane's coming, or we're about to have a winter storm, I'm working extra hours too. Sometimes a little bit crazy hours as well, 12 to 14 hour days. So keep in mind when there's storms coming, there can put some really long hours and some really crazy hours.
Most definitely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about going from the next step. You've got your college degree and you're starting to apply for jobs. And as we know, a lot of you are going to be interested in working for the National Weather Service. Clay's the expert there because that's what he does for a living. So let's talk a little bit about the process of getting hired at the National Weather Service. What are the steps like there?
Yeah, so a lot of their job openings are actually posted on USA Jobs. And they have certain criteria as far as how your resume should be structured. And that actually wasn't there when I applied. I think it's relatively new. And basically they have like the list of, or like the instructions for you to follow as far as how you set up your resume. And if you don't, it's not even going to make the panel. The folks in the HR who are not even related to the meteorological field are just going to throw your resume out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I found. I applied for the National Weather Service a few times during my career and only made it to the panel a couple of times. And it's because I just didn't have my ducks in a row. And you have to follow those instructions absolutely to the letter if you want if you want your application to get to the hiring officials, the meteorologists in charge at the National Weather Service offices that you've applied for. If you don't, then it's going to your application's going to get thrown in the trash can.
It's going to suffer.
Yeah, it sure is.
One of the other things I also wanted to point out, whenever you're applying, make sure you know the weather and how it works as far as the region you're applying for.
Right.
Of course, it's different across the entire United States. So, for example, when I was applying for Greenville-Spartanburg, they asked me about pulse thunderstorms. They asked me about the different modes and how they develop as far as going from, singular cell thunderstorms to multi-cells to supercells. I got asked a lot about cold air damming and how, Miller A and Miller B type winter storms and how those work. So you get asked all these local questions as far as how it impacts you for that specific region. And so depending on where you're applying to, just make sure that you have at least an adequate knowledge of exactly how, patterns work there and what they're most concerned with as far as their main hazard types in weather.
This is where the geography comes into place too. A lot of people even come through a meteorology program somewhere without having really good geographical knowledge. And it's important, especially if you're applying for the National Weather Service, to study that geography in advance as well, because you really can't put out a good forecast if you don't have a good understanding of the geography of the region that you're applying for, as well as the climatology. Take some time to look at that as well. Now, if you're going to a place like AccuWeather, you're studying more general nationwide or even worldwide climatology. I don't remember if you did any international schedules in
did.
AccuWeather, but I did. I did a bunch of them, I learned a lot about places like South America and South Africa and Australia, their geography. I knew I had a pretty good foundation of U.S. geography after getting out of meteorology school at UNC Asheville, but overseas not so much. But I learned a lot doing forecasting for other places around the world when I was working for AccuWeather.
Yeah, I did too. I'm trying to think. I know I did a lot of in India, Europe. I did South America, those mines that they have. I think Europe was the main one, India, and then parts of the Middle East. I'm pretty sure that I did some of the forecasting for. So it definitely brought in a new perspective.
Right.
And of course, with how everything is basically the opposite as far as how the general weather patterns work, south of the equator. So that took some getting used to as well.
Yeah, that's right. Forecasting in the southern hemisphere is a slightly different animal. The laws of physics are the same everywhere, but again, the geography and climatology varies from place to place, and it's important to have an understanding of that for any reason you're applying for. And that doesn't apply just to the National Weather Service. That's also if you're going to a TV job somewhere, if you're becoming a broadcaster, if you're going to apply for a job in Southern California, you want to study those microclimates and the way the marine layer behaves out there, and
Santa Ana winds.
Right, the Santa Ana winds too. You'll want to study all of that.
Monsoon season.
Exactly. All right, so that covers most of it. So what else would you like to tell us about working toward being a National Weather Service meteorologist?
Yeah, so of course there's different aspects as far as what you can do in the National Weather Service. You have a lot of what we call decision support service, and so that's where we can provide on-site support for different events that we usually do for like emergency management. Of course, we have a lot of other important partners, such as the media, of course, state partners. So South Carolina Emergency Management Division being a big one, FEMA, a lot of federal partners as well, schools, universities. So a lot of that plays into how we provide our services to others, especially depending on what they're looking for and what their thresholds are for either specific location events or even just schools in general trying to figure out if they should go to school, or I guess e-learning nowadays.
Yeah.
I guess now I can say back in my day, we actually had snow days.
Right. Not so much anymore.
So we lean a lot on decision support service. I think that's where the National Weather Service is headed. But you also have people in the background that are doing a lot of the programming and keeping up with AWIPS and our software with that, and GFE, the graphical forecast editor, and also just having the basic understanding of how we can create different tools to help us further our forecasts and to make them as accurate as possible. Morning operations, that gets tiring as well, but it's also rewarding. And just kind of putting in the work, and a lot of training goes into it when you first begin. You got to get certified in certain stuff, one of them being radar. So that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you're ready for. The schedule, of course, is where it can get gruesome, like I said.
Yeah.
To be honest, I love my job at the National Weather Service. That's my one and only complaint, really, but there's not much we can do about it because my motto is also weather never stops. So
that's right.
So you need us there, and so that gives me a new, perspective on it, and allows me to not complain as much about my schedule.
That's right. Everyone depends upon the National Weather Service, so it's important that they're ready to go 24/7. And it's not just one or two people; it's a whole team of people, not just the meteorologists, but also the support staff, the programmers that put those tools together for them, the electronics techs that keep them going and keep the radars going, and keep the communication going between weather satellites and all the other tools, and then supporting all that will be the researchers that find these new tools that we need to help us provide a better product and a better forecast from the National Weather Service. And to just wrap things up here, a couple of things you mentioned made me think of another thing that's valuable to study if you're interested in becoming a meteorologist, and that's emergency management.
Yep.
There are a lot of meteorologists hired by emergency management agencies. There are a few that work for South Carolina's Emergency Management Division. FEMA hires meteorologists as well,
Yep.
and I'm pretty sure that other states' emergency management agencies are hiring meteorologists as well. I know PEMA does too. Jeff Jumper up there, the state meteorologist, or at least that was his job title. I think he's been promoted since then. But
okay.
Yeah, there a lot of states, particularly their emergency management agencies, hire meteorologists, and that's another career path you can take, and it's something you might want to consider if you are on the way to become a meteorologist. Well, I think that wraps it up, Clay. Thanks for joining us. It was a great opportunity with us both being an exhibitor here at the Schiele Museum and Weatherproof today to get together and to talk for a little while. So I'm glad we could get together, and look forward to continuing to work with you here in my role at the State Climate Office and yours at the Weather Service.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. And of course, I always enjoy doing these kind of interviews. So anytime you guys want me to come on, just give me a holler.
All right, will do. All right, that does it for this episode of the Carolina Weather Group. Thanks for joining us tonight. Again, I'm Frank Strait, and for Clay Chaney, y'all take care and enjoy that weather.